Iwo Jima is probably the most known battle of the Pacific theater of the Second World War. Images of the gruesome battle were headlined over every major newspaper in America. Many people know the famous picture that was taken at the top of Mount Suribachi and the basic facts associated with the battle. However, the rest of the details still remain unknown by most. Many people don't even realize the significance of this hard-fought battle, which claimed the lives of almost 30,000 people. The Battle of Iwo Jima was a major turning point not only in the Pacific theater, but also in journalism and advertising in the United States, which now is taking global effect. It was a major turning point in the world's history. The photographs taken on Iwo Jima would soon become global icons and change the way that people looked at the Second World War, and how they would go about journalism during wartime. This is the story of the battle for Iwo Jima. Aerial bombardments began almost 9 months before the battle even started. At that point, it was decided that an island was needed for the U.S. Air Force to bomb Japan. They decided Iwo Jima was in the perfect location and had the features to perform such bombings. Iwo Jima is an island located 750 miles from Tokyo, which put in prime location for the U.S. Air Force's B-29 bombing missions. The island was only 8 square miles. It was small, but not too small to capacitate an airfield. In fact, there were 3 Japanese airfields on the island. General Curtis LeMay was in charge of the bombing missions and felt he needed Iwo Jima as a strategic point for the possible invasion of Japan. Although this island suited LeMay well, he would have to convince the Navy of the strategic importance of this tiny island. He would later tell the Navy that, I quote, "Without Iwo Jima, I cannot bomb Japan effectively." This would convince the Navy that they had to take Iwo Jima, and they made plans to invade the island in February of 1945.
February 19th, 1945, D-Day. The invasion began at 9 a.m. and was led by a wave of amphibious landing vehicles with Marines from the 4th and 5th Marine Division. Aerial bombardments had begun 9 months before, as well as an extra 10 days of naval bombardment requested by the Marines. 20,000 Imperial soldiers defended the island for Japan, waiting in a system of tunnels, caves, and bomb shelters they had built. The Japanese had in place several artillery positions within the side of Mount Suribachi, as well as other areas of the island. The Japanese were not going to give up this fight easily. They were told to follow the Bushido Code, to fight to the death. The first waves of the Marines finally landed on that February morning and were ready for a long and tough battle. The volcanic ash of the island was so deep it was like trying to trudge through water. Objectives were assigned to each unit, the main one being to isolate Mount Suribachi. This dormant volcano provided the Japanese with a view of the entire island, and if not taken, could have made a difference in the battle. The Japanese entrenched themselves in bunkers and tunnels within the mountain, making it even harder for the Marines to take. With all of this going on, the Japanese were also calling in artillery and mortar fire from the mountain at the men on the beaches. This would lead to hundreds of lives being lost. However, it was a necessity for the Marines to isolate Mount Suribachi on D-Day. 4th Marines' objective was to take the Japanese stronghold at the quarry. The 5th Marines had their own objective as well, to isolate Mount Suribachi. The objectives were both completed on the day of the landing. 1/3 of Iwo Jima had been taken by the Marines in that time, including Motoyama Airfield No. 1, but the airfields had not been captured until the day after the landing. The 28th Marines and 5th Marines ended up capturing Mount Suribachi on the 23rd of February. The Americans were slowly gaining control of the small island. Soon, the 3rd Marines began fighting on February 24th, with the goal to secure the center portion of Iwo. But shortly after the 5th and 28th Marines captured Suribachi, General Kuribayashi concentrated a majority of the Japanese Imperial Army on the central and northern parts of the war-torn island. The airfield soon became a problem, though. The 3rd Marines had started to encounter heavy resistance in an attempt to capture the 2nd airfield. Eventually, the entire island would be taken over by the Marines. The 3rd, 4th, and 5th Marine Divisions reached the northern beach of Iwo Jima on March 10th. The island was finally secured several days later on March 26, 1945. 6,800 American lives were lost on that island, with over 26,000 American casualties as well. 27 Medal of Honors were awarded to soldiers and sailors on Iwo Jima during the battle. Sadly, only 1,083 Japanese soldiers survived the battle. Of this number, only 216 were actually taken prisoner after the battle.
40 men from 3rd Platoon of Easy Company and the 28th Marines assembled at the base of Mount Suribachi on February 23rd at 8 a.m. Their objective was to raise the first U.S. flag, which measured 54 by 28 inches and was obtained from the attack transport USS Missoula, otherwise known as APA-211. The group of Marines encountered no resistance on the way up the mountain, and a group of men were called over to help set up the first flag. The flag was hoisted at 10:20 a.m. on a steel pipe at the top of Suribachi. This was the first time a flag was raised over Japanese territory. Shortly after this first flag raising, the Marine Corps photographer that shot the picture, Sergeant Lou Lowry, tumbled 50 feet while trying to get away from the grenade. 3 hours later, a second patrol was sent to raise another, larger flag, which measured 96 by 54 inches, and was photographed by Joe Rosenthal, who wanted to photograph the first flag raisers but resorted to the second flag raising. It was the perfect picture, the perfect amount of light, the perfect angle. It was the picture that won the war.
Using new communications technology, Rosenthal's photo, raising the flag on Iwo Jima, was transmitted to a Navy ship and back home within 17 hours. It proceeded to become one of the most reproduced images of all time. 135 million 3-cent stamps featuring the photo were issued, and the image was widely used to market the 7th War Bond Drive. It raised the modern-day equivalent of $3 billion. After raising the flag, the 6 soldiers involved in the flag raising returned to combat. 3. Strank, Block, and Sousley were killed in the following actions. The survivors were sent home after a battle to take part in a public outreach effort for the war. Unable to adjust to a public civilian life, Ira Hayes eventually turned to alcohol and died in 1955. Gagnon arrived at the same fate of alcoholism, dying of a heart attack in 1978. John Bradley largely kept quiet after a war, granting only one interview in 1985. He lived a relatively quiet life and died at 70 in 1994. Despite the passing of all the participants, the image is still invoked today as a symbol of patriotism and service to the nation. It is inspired both the Marine Corps Monument near Arlington National Cemetery as well as the Iwo Jima Memorial in Newington. Also in its legacy are various films ranging from the 1949 film Sands of Iwo Jima to 2006's Flags of Our Fathers. All of this exposure has cemented the Battle of Iwo Jima's legacy in the public mind and the public conscience.
To elaborate on the impact this photograph had on the home front, we interviewed Dr. John Tully, a history professor at CCSU, about the impact this photograph had on the home front and how it still impacts us today.
The way the photograph captured so much of the essence of a large struggle of many Americans working together and then reaching that ability to kind of put the American flag had a significant impact in terms of buoying people's spirit. This was near the end of a long war. Tens and tens of thousands of U.S. soldiers had already perished. There was the concern that this would continue, certainly in the Pacific, moving forward. And so I think it did have an important aspect on the home front. In many ways, the image has a powerful effect today. It's lasting legacy certainly for the U.S. Marines in terms of how they see, how they remember, and memory becomes such an important part of history and the way national memories are formed. It had a very important role in shaping a national memory of the war in the Pacific, and for Marine officers and men of the Marines, it had a very important aspect in kind of symbolizing the entire struggle of all the military, but I think in a special way for U.S. Marines because of that. So the reason we still talk about it, the reason there are sometimes movies about it, and there's a couple of recent books about the flag raising, is because it's such a powerful and iconic image that had an effect both in the home front in 1945 and continues to resonate in our memories of World War II today.
It has become quite clear that Iwo Jima was a turning point in history. The battle had turned the tides of the war in the Pacific Theater. It was part of the end of the island-hopping campaign that claimed the lives of thousands during the war. This has helped the start of what became known as the Manhattan Project and the B-29 bombing missions in Japanese territory. There was finally an end in sight for the war. The morale of the Marines and countless other soldiers was boosted by the news that came from Iwo Jima. Then there was the photograph. This would help win the war. The flag raisers that participated in the war bond drives helped raise money to fund the war efforts on both the Pacific and European fronts. It helped bring hope to those on the home front, and has become a symbol to many Americans, those past and present. It was able to cement a lasting legacy in the minds of American people by symbolizing the triumph and sacrifice of the men fighting on the island. This is why this photograph was such an important turning point on the home front. This can be seen through the many memorials that have been made based on it today, whether it's the Marine Corps Memorial in Washington, D.C., or the Iwo Jima Memorial in New Britain. The photograph has also served as a reminder to the patriotism and heroism that our servicemen and women have done. It also has served as a monument to those that never made it back, and continues to carry on their legacy, bringing an essence of hope to the hearts and minds of many during such tragic times, such as the events that have become known as the Second World War.